Welcome everybody back to another episode of Influencer Insights, where we have Shyla Urkow here from Edmonton, sharing her story about becoming a model and working through some health challenges, as well as the mental health that comes alongside with physical health. And we're really looking forward to hearing her story. She's got lots of great insights on the industry and how to get started, as well as just a really unique background on overcoming adversity and overcoming challenges that a lot of you are going to face when you're joining the industry and getting started yourself. So welcome, Shyla. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Ben, for having me. I'm really privileged to be here, and I'm grateful to show my experience and my story.
Awesome. We're not too far apart in the world. I'm on the east side of Saskatchewan, and you're in Edmonton. So it's beautiful city there to go visit once in a while. So hopefully we'll connect on the road too. But sure. Can you give us a little background on where you're at right now and what you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm in Edmonton. I've been here for about 12 years. I was born in Camrose, which is just an hour outside of town.
Another nice city.
Nice little city. I've done many things, since, after high school, like owning businesses and working different jobs. But I did always have a soul passion on the modeling industry, and so I've been able to work that around a lot of things in my life and had some really amazing experiences. So now I have my own consulting company for business development online, but it allows me to do my modeling as much as I want, or can work from wherever. Technology is amazing these days.
Oh, it's crazy.
You just gotta find what works for you, right?
That's right.
And I'm currently I'm writing a book right now for publication in the new year. So
very exciting.
I'm really excited about that. I never thought I would write a book, so that's pretty cool.
It's a big endeavor.
And that's the kind of road I'm going down creatively. But outside of that, it's just a huge passion for the fashion industry and the modeling experiences.
Sure. So. When you were younger and you got kind of introduced to modeling, was it like a friend that you thought this would be a fun thing to do, or did you meet somebody or go to a fashion show, or what kind of brought you to that?
I was so in Camrose, like obviously it's not like scouts that come to Camrose. But I've been scouted a couple times at West Ed.
Oh yeah, cool.
From agencies, and after a couple times, my mom was like, maybe you should
give that
try this. Like, let's go for it. Let's do it. See what happens. I'm like, okay. And in my brain, I was like, oh, well, if I'm being scouted, then I must be good enough.
Sure.
Right. So I just didn't have any expectation. I thought it was just cool to be scouted, and didn't have any, clue of what the industry was. I obviously always watched models on TV and, whatever, when social media came out. This is dating me. Social media came out.
Yeah, exactly. MySpace, like.
like MySpace and all that kind of stuff. But then Facebook and Instagram just blew everything up. So I was always interested in it.
Cool. What age were you getting scouted at, roughly?
So I was getting scouted around 15, and when I was around 15, 16, we decided to go for it. So we contacted one of the agencies and said, hey, we've been scouted a couple times. They said, okay, great, come for an interview. I'm like, I have no experience, I have no portfolio, nothing. They're like, totally fine, just come and we'll see what we can do. So I met with them. My interactions were great. I'm not going to name the agency because it turned out being not a good experience. But at the beginning, it was great. To pay for the big fashion shoot to get your portfolio started, and I knew nothing about things like TFP, like trading for products, projects to get your portfolio going. So I thought, I have to invest all this money into becoming a model. But it's the same thing. If you want to invest into becoming a teacher, you've got to invest into being a teacher. If you 100%. Want to invest into being an athlete, you've got to put the time and money into being an athlete. Like, it's with anything.
Yep.
So it was good. I had a few, good experiences and photo shoots at a young age. And obviously it was tough being an hour out of town to come in for stuff. But I started to get ridiculed by my own agency and
wonderful
by some of the stylists that I worked with. And being like 16, 17, they told me things like, you need a nose job, or your hips are too big, and this kind of stuff. And it's hard to hear at a young age, let alone at all.
Of course.
So I kind of faded away from it. Thought, yeah, you know what? I had this experience. It was cool.
Good enough.
Didn't really think much of it. Yeah. I always, wanted, I'm like, oh, maybe one day it would be really cool if I got discovered by a different agency or got to do something else, but I didn't really think much of it. And then fast forward to my mid-20s, I was 26 when I really got started. I was in a Dollarama in Edmonton, and I run into a girlfriend of mine who was a hairstylist.
Okay.
And she goes, oh my gosh, I need you for a photo shoot to do an ad for my salon. And she's like, would you like to do that? I was like, okay. I'm like, sure. Like, you manning the ship, let's go for it.
Yep.
So I showed up, got my hair and makeup done. The photographer was actually her boyfriend at the time, and he was he still is to this day, Morgan Gold, bless his heart, great guy. He actually got me a lot of connections right off the bat. He helped me get different jobs for commercials. I started to make more connections on my own. Yeah, it was just all about who you knew, really. It is all about making those connections, and sometimes it takes a long time to get those connections. Sometimes they come out of the blue. You never know. So I was like, why not? I did this shoot. There were a few jobs. I was getting paid, and I had no agency. I just said, here's an hourly rate or a day rate, and people were like, yeah, great, do it. Or if they wanted me to do my own hair and makeup, I charged more for that.
Sure.
Knowing that they could hire someone else to do that, or they could just pay me to do it.
Exactly.
Right. Learning those kinds of things. And then so I did a few things just over the next year. And at the time I was very physically not well, but it was my escape. Then one day, the same hairstylist, she called me and she said, so do you want to go to Paris? And
no, don't want to go to Paris, eh?
I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, I have a friend of mine who's a hairstylist. She's on Team Canada for what's called the World Hair Olympics.
Wow.
I had no idea it existed. No idea. I started researching, and I was like, yeah, like, connect me with her. I'd love to meet her, chat a little bit, see what that's about. So we met. We started doing tons of prep because for that show, it's with OMC. You can Google OMC Hair World. Okay. And that's this big hair Olympics that happens in Paris every year. And then every few years, they might go to like Tokyo or Malaysia or different places. But over 200,000 people go to this hair show. And it's a big runway competition. And it's just like,
that's insane.
It's the coolest thing I've ever done. And no one knows it exists. I don't even care. It was just such a cool experience. So there's a lot of prep that went into that. There's categories that you do, like especially for long hair. So no one was chopping my hair off, or I might have had some interesting colors once in a while, but
right.
It was kept pretty professional and really nice. And they design everything from the gown to the shoes. I did my own makeup, actually, most of it. And my hairstylist, she did a lot of mine too. And my stylist, Anne Petrulek, and we've done many hair shows all over, Alberta, Canada, and now obviously in Paris. So obviously COVID kind of killed that. So we're really excited to get back to doing that again, probably next year. But yeah, we placed top 10 in the world out of like 130 countries. And, there was, this huge stage, and one of the categories was bridal, and you had to do a hairdo in 25 minutes. Wow. Perfectly, precisely, clean, which takes a lot of practice.
That's a big challenge.
Months and months of practice to get this down. And then you're planning your hair color and all the little basic things of it's a week after we've colored your hair, your roots are starting to show. It's very technical.
Right.
So it was very fascinating. And I got the chance to meet randomly in the hotel we were staying at. I met a lady that did hair for all the Hunger Games movies and for Taylor Swift and Selena Gomez, and really cool people and names. She was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award named Anne Bray. It was just fascinating. She just we just chatted a little. I had no idea who she was. And she's like, would you like me to come up with you and your stylist and work with you for a bit? I was like,
sure.
Of course. Sure. It was so cool. So that's a great connection to have too, if I'm ever into the southern states, right? So,
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then I did everything from bridal to restaurant commercials to runway shows just locally or in Calgary, Vancouver, and And I even got, like, aside from being signed eventually with World Management, who I'm with now, they're a wonderful company. And I love their approach to helping models start out. And I have a diverse kind of connections. So there's all sorts of things you get to try. But on my own, I kind of made connections and did some music videos. And that was really fun because I enjoyed the performance side of it. It wasn't just like a still photo or being on a runway. It was, grew up a dancer, so it was really fun for me to perform kind of in another way.
So we can Google you and find you on YouTube someplace in a music video, or
maybe not. Yeah,
that's pretty cool though. That just builds out your portfolio too in a different way. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I did some acting out of that and little background parts for like some pilot episodes of different shows and stuff, and just seeing that film industry too, it opened up a lot of doors to do stuff like that. So yeah, that was really cool.
Right on. Cool. So those are some highlights and stuff like that. Being with our group here, we talk a lot about safety and helping people start out and that sort of thing. What are some things that new models or people looking to get into this, or people maybe even they've been in it for a while but they've run into some hiccups? What are some things that you try and avoid, and how do you mitigate those kind of issues and stuff? So
for sure. So you have to remember that you yourself are an entrepreneur. You're self-contracted. You are not an employee.
Right.
You represent yourself and potentially an agency, but primarily you create your own image.
Right.
You really have to have ownership over who you are, what you represent, how you present yourself, not even just online, but face to face. There's a lot of people out there that, especially with newer models, there's some photographers or stylists, or, I've heard lots of horror stories about people being taken advantage of. There's a lot of, unfortunately for girls, especially, there is, a danger of having sexual assault or abuse or different uncomfortable situations. And if you're just starting out, if you're meeting a photographer for the first time, or they approach you to do a photo shoot, meet them in public, get to know them a little bit, talk about the project, or you can have boundaries for yourself. Like, I only shoot in public places, or can I bring a friend, or can I bring my boyfriend or my parent, or anything like that is always acceptable, because if they're professional, it won't be a problem. So, and you got to be prepared for rejection, and a lot of this industry, you can take it as rejection, but now after a while, you see that it's because they're looking for certain specific things. You don't go and try out for a basketball team and they end up looking for a point guard, but you're actually the center position. Like, you just have to accept it. There's just something they're looking for, and you just might not fit that, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean you stop looking, or you made a connection at least. You never know, right?
That's right.
So yeah, there's nothing wrong with you if you don't get a casting, or you don't get a certain job that you wanted or whatever. Just keep trying. Keep trying. Research, what maybe they're looking for specifically. See if you can work on that in the next casting. Always look for feedback and never be afraid to ask for it. And just be who you are and don't be sorry. Like, be professional and kind and everything, but yeah, you just have to not be afraid to be yourself. And I see a lot of that. I get a lot of that strength from watching drag queens, because they're so out there and diverse, and they seem like they have no fear. They, changing to a completely different person in a day and perform and have this such tenacity and mindset behind them in what they do. I think that can really translate to me looking at my work and going, you know what, I need to have the same kind of drive and the same kind of passion and intensity into me doing my work. And it's paid off for sure.
I really like that approach that you take, because it's growing up, and often you get a job or you start doing day-to-day work, and you kind of assume that, okay, I'm going to go join the modeling agency and they're just going to send me jobs, and I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be at home. But it's more than that, right? It's about building out, it's its own entrepreneurial adventure all on its own, because you need to build yourself up, and you need to make those connections and kind of source out that work, right? Like, you got to be making the phone calls and talking to people, making those connections. So that's
and like I said, finding those photography groups online and modeling and photographer and stylist groups on Facebook or Instagram. Like you can just search them and join them and get connected with all kinds of creative people and do different projects. Like if you want to do, if cosplay is your thing, go for it. If you want to do more high fashion, or you just like to do runway or whatever it is, like there's all sorts of photographers that are just looking for experience too. And it is really a good way to build your portfolio and get your experience going. And then sometimes there are great paid gigs out of it too. Like a lot of my time when I was starting out, I said, okay, well, if you enjoyed working with me this time, then the next time I do expect compensation and a fee for my time. And most of the time they are like, absolutely, that's no problem, because they've seen what I already did and they've worked with me already. They are willing to pay for that same experience. So it's a good thing for sure. And you got to remember, like, there's women, I always think about supermodel Giselle Bushton, I think I probably butchered her last name.
Tough name, yeah.
She was rejected by 42 agencies by the age of 17.
Is that right?
And now she's one of the most legendary supermodels in the world. So, if someone like that is getting rejection all the time, it's normal. You have to normalize it. Next. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
That's a pretty cool stat. Did not know that. So did you like you said in high school that you had been with that one agency and that didn't go well? Did you try some other agencies along the way before you got to World now, or have you really find on your own?
I had looked at some a little bit, but being in Edmonton, Alberta, there's not a lot of opportunity here for different agencies. There's only a few, right? Yeah. And I even would go to Calgary, talk with other agencies, like even smaller local agencies can be great, but for what I wanted to do and wanting to get into, more big picture commercial work or bigger runway events and decently paid work, you have to go through an agency, eventually.
Of course.
Yeah. Or have someone that has those connections, which is rare, but most of them are through an agency for sure.
Yeah, that's where they all look. So that makes sense. Yeah. You mentioned earlier about you had some health challenges and that sort of thing along the way, especially that kind of, I don't know if it delayed any of your modeling career, but modeling was certainly the thing that kind of carried you through a lot of that stuff. But how much of that?
Yeah, so I was 23 and I had a surgical accident. And I won't go into all the details, but they had basically wrecked my stomach.
Oh my.
And a couple years later, I had to have my stomach removed. And then over the next couple years, I struggled really hard, like nutritionally and like just not good at all.
Yeah.
And that's when I actually really started my modeling career.
Crazy.
So I was probably, the most unwell I've ever been, but I would just do as much as I could whenever I could. And that's when I got my Paris job. A lot of my first bigger paid jobs was at that time. And I just had this awesome mentality, I think, about just pursuing something that was making me just feel better for where I was at. It wasn't about, wanting to get a bunch of subscribers or followers or likes and stuff. I was like, I barely posted in the beginning, really. And I was just like, wow, this is really helping me personally. Like, it's something to focus on. It's really fun and exciting, and I'm passionate about it. So, that was a really good thing. And then after a couple of years, I did have to go on life support at home. So I was on IV life support 12 hours a day through a heart device. After that started, I did take a break for a little while.
Sure.
And, once I was feeling healthy, I was more worried about how people were going to perceive me with this medical device on my body.
Right.
And if that was going to affect work. So it was a device that was on my arm that I could just wrap and hide. So I tried it. I just went for it. I went back to my connections, said, hey, I'm coming back into things. Let's do some projects. I started working again and doing more things. And I just got really good. Like, I wore bridal gowns and did photo shoots, but you can't even see that I had this crazy heart device in my body. I didn't worry about my scars, which are pretty crazy, and all this kind of stuff. And I've never had an issue. I've never been ridiculed for it. People have always just thought as like a wow, that's a cool story, or
Totally.
wow, it's really incredible that you're still doing what you're doing, despite all this. So, if you have those things that you think are a hindrance, you have no idea how much of an asset they are to you, and how that it develops your character, and it'll just really expose whether or not you really want this, right?
Yes.
In anything, not just modeling. Tough times expose whether you really want to go for something. So so that was great. And then I eventually did find a surgeon that fixed my stomach, and I've been off life support for a year and a half. And I started with World a couple of years ago, like before pandemic. The pandemic obviously affected everyone. But
how long were you on the life support for?
2 years.
Wow, that's pretty tough. Yep.
So 2 years. It was a tough time for sure, and mentally and physically. But I had worked so hard on my mentality, and it's not to say that I never had mental health struggles through that.
Of course.
But for the most part, I always had a big picture mindset, and I wasn't going to settle with this being my life.
Sure.
Forever.
Sure.
And that's why I had to fight and look for doctors and surgeons to help me.
Yeah.
That eventually paid off and did save my life. So that's about how that went.
No, I'm guessing going through that, you probably, you talked about the mental strength and that sort of thing. Like you probably had done work beforehand in some of those areas in your life before you went into this, or maybe you found that all the way through. What are some things that you did, or some, avenues that you found, or mentors, or what was the kind of things that kept your, understanding the mental strength important?
I'm very fortunate that I have found people with an entrepreneurial mindset at a young age. I met them when I was 18.
Cool.
And just got into different associations with people that thought the same way. And it was life-changing. The things they were able to do in their life, like not just because of finances, but because of their values and their attitudes and their vision that they had for their life. I think that if you don't figure that out in what that might look like, even in the next 5-10 years, not 40 years down the line, but
exactly,
a little closer, like it was all about what I fed my mind with. So reading, podcasts, TED Talks. I would go to different leadership and entrepreneurial seminars.
Good.
For that growth, because it helped me in every other area of life. Not just modeling, even if I was trying to get a job somewhere or just in relationships in general. It's all about what you feed your mind and who you associate with. So, that's always been a very big focus for me, in knowing where I'm going is who I'm around.
Sure. Well, hearing your story, like there's, to go through the surgery and stuff, most people would just shut down and go into a little crab hole, and you wouldn't see them until the light of day broke again or whatever. So hearing your story that you kind of got to that low point and were able to keep going on is something that, that's not a very common story, and it's incredibly inspiring to hear when we hear that. So what are some things that you do now to kind of continue? Are you still working on the mindset? Do you have some daily rituals? Do you have some, those kind of things that you go through?
Some people loan me books, and I'm like, I'm not really interested in that. I don't read novels or fantasy stuff. Like that stuff's awesome and entertaining, but I fill my time a lot with personal growth and mindset. And for me, I do have a spiritual life, so I invest time into that, and that grounds me. Even with being specific in what you follow online, go through and filter through the trash that doesn't make you feel good about yourself, or just mute people that you just maybe
don't need to hear from.
With. Like, you can still be friends, but you don't need to see their stuff every day. It's fine. You got to protect your own mind and
good.
Be aware of what you're watching, especially with so many different platforms these days, right? And they're just throwing everything at you from all sides and different stuff all at once. So, and I've gone through times where I just shut off from social media for a little while and took a break, and then come back. And I never feel like it's ever really controlled my life, so I can't personally attest to being drowned in social media. I mean, it was tough during COVID for sure, because that's like the only connection we had with people. So I really struggled during COVID because I'm such a people person, and like I would book Zoom calls every day with friends because I just, that was just what I had to do to cope. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's definitely some perks to it because it's a lot more comfortable for all of us to be, I think, on Zoom calls now than we used to be.
Very convenient. Still. Yeah. So a hybrid is good.
Yeah, that's right. Do you have any, kind of just an off the cuff question, but do you have any like authors, people that you're listening to right now that you'd recommend other people get into or kind of struck you?
There's a lot of stuff out there, right? I'm personally more inclined to look towards people with a business mindset.
Sure.
Because it applies to everything I do.
Yeah.
Whether it's my company, even if I were to work for a job, it still helps me to have perspective on the company I'm working for too.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, as a model, you have to learn that being an entrepreneur, time is not money. You have to invest some time in the beginning.
Yeah.
Hone your craft, get your skills going. And many, many entrepreneurs talk about this, or people that are successful as athletes or models or like celebrities of all kinds, whoever has mastered what they do.
Yeah.
It took time and investment and, it took those things to
build
be
the craft. Great. Yep.
And now, my mentality is if someone hires me for a job, they're not hiring me for the 2 to 4 hours for the project.
Yeah.
They're hiring me for the last, 8 years of my experience that I put into becoming who I am and having the skills I have.
It's good.
Right?
Good outlook.
So, don't devalue yourself in those ways. And a lot of books about, I would recommend people like Brené Brown. She is very good with self-reflection and learning how to, not be a victim in life. And her emotional intelligence is really, really incredible. And it's very important, I think, to learn to lead yourself and parent yourself. Because we all had things as kids growing up that were imperfect and our parents did a great job. But at the same time, you are now an adult. It's time for you to establish who you are and your values and how you want to be perceived and how you want to connect with the world. So study people that you admire in their mentality or success or in their mindset, and go for fruit on the tree. Don't just look at people that have no experience online and are just like living in their mother's basement with a mustard stain on their shirt, typing away their opinions to everybody. Like 100%. Look for people that have what you want and chase them, essentially. And you would be surprised at how much you'll gain from that, but how much people are actually really honored to help you and give you advice.
Yeah.
That's in reading, that's in, exploring podcasts. Like, I love my replenishment time is with comedy. I love comedy. So, I'll listen to some comedians here and there, but in the mornings I put on, a TED Talk or a certain entrepreneur that I'm listening to.
Cool.
There's some you won't connect with, there's some you will, but I am so attracted to that lifestyle and mentality that they live life on their own terms, that's what I want to surround myself with. Being single now, like, it's important for me to also look for that in a partner.
Sure, of course.
And having that as established as a necessity for me and who I'm around, for sure. So, and people will think you're crazy, and people will think all sorts of things. Half of my friends they probably just go, "Oh yeah, there she goes again," like whatever.
They're not gonna see results in the end, though, right? And that's kind of the key thing, right? So yeah. So I love that, because mental health is such a dominant thing in our world, and I think COVID and all those things kind of brought a lot of that out. But the one thing and there's lots of support out there, and I'm so glad there is, because there's so many people struggling. But something that any of us can do ahead of time is just like you're saying there, Shyla. Like, it's going through that building. It's almost like building a muscle, right? When you're listening to the right stuff and putting the right things in your mind, and those kind of things carry you through those tough times a lot more than somebody telling you it's all good, right? All the time will carry you through. So
and there's always someone with something worse going on. You gotta kind of keep that perspective too. Not that you should feel guilty for feeling bad about your situation or anything, but like, it can always be worse. So
what are some of the next ambitions in Shyla's plans as she develops as a model? And
I think it's really important to have some big ambitions and to have small goals at the same rate.
Tell me about that. I like that. Big ambitions,
so,
small goals.
Big ambitions, small goals. I have these great things that I would like to do. Like, I was very lucky to be contacted on Instagram by Coco Rocha, the supermodel.
Cool.
And she has invited me to come to New York and do a mentorship program with her through her. She only takes like maybe 10, 12 models at a time.
Wow.
And she invites them and you stay with her, and it's like 5 to 7 days, and she mentors you, teaches you runway, posing, marketing, social media, like everything.
Wow.
And, at the time I couldn't go because I was not well. And she said, don't worry about it. And then COVID happened, and she still checks on me once in a while. I was like, hey, when do you want to come? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that really soon. So that's something I'm pushing towards in a big accomplishment that I've been waiting for a very long time. And I'm very excited to have that experience, whether it goes anywhere or not, or it's just a cool experience. It's going to be amazing, but it's going to be great exposure. And obviously that's going to be something very exciting. But even, daily and weekly, I have goals for myself with my personal growth. So now I'm looking at things like developing patience. I find that I can be a very impatient person. Just ask me during rush hour and things like that. So I typically, like, once a month, I focus on one attribute I'd like to be better in.
Cool.
Even if I don't get that far, I still put in an effort and some awareness into it. So that's just more of my personal life and goals. And then I have goals with finances and different things, obviously. But my biggest ambitions revolve around helping other people get where they want to be. So
cool.
Currently writing the book I'm writing, I was actually just asked this last week to co-write a book with a friend of mine.
Cool.
And he's got a crazy life story. So he had sent me a couple chapters of his book and was like, hey, like, tell me what you think. And I was like, okay. So I read it and gave him some comments, asked him some questions.
Sure.
And he called me a couple days later and said, I have a business proposal for you. And I was like, okay. He's like, I need you to help me finish my book. And I was like, what? He's like, yep, I'll give you editor and co-writing credits. And, we negotiated terms and royalties if it sells well and all that kind of stuff. So
very cool.
I mean, just to be a part of that, I'm very excited and helping him tell his story. And I think that that's something that I now am thinking about doing in the long run, full time, helping people tell their stories. And yeah, I think that's really exciting. So that's a passion of mine that I'm excited for. But yeah, and then otherwise I'm at a place where I feel like I'm starting over, like being healthy again, trying different things. Yeah, continuing my modeling career. If it were to end today, like say I lost all my connections, my agencies, my like whatever, it ended today. My Instagram got shut down, whatever.
Yeah.
I had some really cool experiences. I don't regret any of it.
Awesome.
We always are not where we want to be. None of us are really where we want to be, right? Nope. So having peace with the fact that I put in the effort when I could, as I could, and did have some great experiences, I'm very blessed and I feel very grateful to have come this far and do this much. And I'm, like I said, I'm really nobody in terms of the modeling world, but I think that my mindset will transition to some really bigger things. And I think because I've seen it happen for others, and that's what I'll work on in the future.
Very cool. Very cool. Mm-hmm. I love that. It's the world is full of things to do all the time. And I think having those ambitions and those goals is something that if you're not striving towards something, you're getting behind, right? And not worrying about the people that are, naysayers and the negativity and all that stuff, I think is a good way to drag yourself down, let alone, move yourself forward at all, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Trying to think, do you have any closing thoughts that you wanted to leave with everybody? You summed that up fairly well, but
yeah, I just really hope that people find their passion for this. Don't get so stressed out and burnt out of how it's going, or how it's not going, or whatever. Really invest in yourself and invest in your skills and your connections and relationships, and don't be afraid to try. Like, just don't be afraid to try. I mean, there's tons of times I go into castings, I'm like, I'm 31 and these kids are 20.
Yeah. Tell me about
it. Sometimes I get the job and it's like, okay,
yeah.
like I shouldn't have even thought of that. Like it shouldn't have even been a worry of mine. So, you know, age is just a number. I know lots of women older than me that are still
working,
loving it and doing modeling and
very cool.
Have different body styles and different body types and personalities and stuff. And there is room for everyone in this world. You look at people like Winnie Harlow, she's a supermodel and she has a pigmentation problem with her skin where she's African American, but she has white blotches all over her skin.
Yep.
But she's different.
Mm-hmm.
And she's on huge runways and very unique and owns it and is super successful at what she does. So, you know, I look at people like that and I always root for the underdog. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Usually the people coming from the back, right? Just
you have no idea.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, no one would have thought that I probably would have been doing modeling and in business and all this stuff. Like, I was a very quiet, shy child. And it feels good to not like proving anyone wrong or anything, but it feels good to be like, I'm proving this to myself. Gotcha. A little bit. Like it's nice to be like, I'm doing what I wanted to do and what I really love. And not a lot of people get the opportunity to do that. So.
No, that's right. No, that's an incredible story because there's so many people walking around wishing they could do things that, they probably could, right? If they took the step in that right direction.
Yeah.
Right? So
absolutely.
Cool. So how do we get in contact with you? How do we follow you? Because I think everybody's going to be excited to see this book come out now. So what you create next
I'll post about it and keep you updated. So you can find me on Facebook is Shyla Urkow. And I have a Facebook modeling page, Shyla Urkow Model. Cool. And my Instagram is just my name, Shyla Urkow, at Shyla Urkow.
Cool. And
then I'm on the World Management website and all that, but otherwise, that's how you find me. And if you have anyone has questions or they, want to know more or, have experiences they want to chat about, or are looking to connect with more people, let me know. I can definitely open to that. So.
Awesome. Well, that's so cool. Thank you very much. Everybody will appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And again, thank you for adding this to the community. I know it took us a couple of scheduling days to get everything lined up here, but it's so good that it did. And we're happy to hear more of your stories and watch your career kind of develop as we go along here. So
thank you so much, man. I really appreciate being here. And it's a responsibility to share your story and I don't take it lightly. And I'm very grateful that you've had me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.